Hey Rick, Tony here. I think your name is Rick anyway. I'm not sure. If that's just your handle, then don't worry about it. But I'll just call you Rick for the sake of brevity, and being able to call you something rather than hey you. Look, I thought I'd do a video this time because basically this is getting really hard to argue in this format with the way this conversation is going. Basically because you're not really giving me anything that I can grab hold of and argue about. It just keeps slipping through my fingers. Take your theology, for example. I mean, honestly, you just seem to be forming opinions about the Bible, and in the end, that's your evidence, a bunch of opinions. You say you use logic, but oh dude, it's not that evident. I mean, take your thing about the Lord, like Jesus saying he came back to fulfill the law. He wasn't going to change one iota of it, and you then alluded to the fact that this could only be maybe the Ten Commandments. I'm sorry, but according to biblical scholarship and that, it's the laws out of Leviticus. You can have all the opinions you want, but they are the laws handed down to Moses. God schmob, it doesn't matter. Within the Bible, those are the laws, but you've formed opinions that that's not. So that's all the argument's going to happen. It's going to boil down to me going, yes it is, and you going, no it's not, yes it is, no it's not, yes it is. Waste of time. Theology off the board. It really doesn't matter what you want to believe about it, because you're just forming your own opinions and it makes it really hard. Okay, evolution. Look, I said that you don't really know the subject, because I still don't think you do. I know you keep telling me that you do, but honestly, it's not an easy subject to get your head around. A lot of people look at it from the wrong direction, and especially you can't get to there from here. You can't look at what the diversity we got now and look at where it came from, because you'll always be incredulous about it. You'll always just go, well, to me that seems really impossible. And I think that's what you're doing. You're not really looking at evidence. You're not really getting everything together and deciding, well, yeah, evolution is actually the best explanation for the biodiversity on the earth. That it is what we have. It's falsifiable. It can predict stuff. It's utilised by the health sciences in dealing with outbreaks of viruses and bacteria and how to fight them. It's a practical science that has so much evidence that it just blows your mind. Yet, once again, you've formed opinions and use this logic that you keep going on about. I mean, and one of the reasons why I'm saying, look, I'll read some of the stuff that you've written to me. Let's say, look, okay, I will try to explain again. When I say something like, you don't see a cat growing flippers, I said quite a bit more than that before and after the statement. You have to take the entire statement as a whole. I obviously know that evolution is a slow process, and a cat wouldn't give rise to a form that had flippers. I simply do not know how to make it clear to you that I fully understand the slow process. I don't think you do. I mean, going back to your letter before that, this could be quite long also, but as an example, and please don't tell me this is how isn't how evolution works. I know it takes millions of years. You can breed animals in a few generations and change them greatly, but in the end, if you breed a cat, it will always be a cat. Yes, it will always be a cat, but it will have small changes. What animal will merge from that in 100,000 years time, in 1,000,000 years time? So you can't get to there from here. It's ridiculous. Yes, it'll always be a cat with small changes. with each generation. And then if you change the environment and get a little bit of natural selection going on, you get the ones that can adapt to that environment better splitting off, and the ones that can't either dying or moving to a place where they can adapt. So to say this creationist claptrap of yes, it'll always be a cat, once again, it's leading me to believe that you don't really understand the subject. There is nothing visible showing me that any current form is changing from its kind to another. You can say it's so slow that we can't observe it, but that's an evolution cop-out. Okay, I'll read that again. You can say that it's so slow that we can't observe it, but that's an evolution cop-out. No, it's not. It's evolution. It's not a cop-out. That's how evolution works. You even said in the previous few lines, I know it takes millions of years, because the little changes add up. And in the end, you start to get a speciation happening, and in the end, you get an animal that looks totally different from its parent species. And that happens over millions of years. So it's not a cop-out. Fact remains, you cannot give me the slightest hint that something is crawling out of the water from land or rising from a fish to an amphibian. Now, look, honestly, dude, there is the mud skipper, okay, the axolotl. These are ambulatory fish, okay. They're starting to get out of that environment. Now, I'm not sure where this is going to lead, but for some reason, if food becomes an issue around the water source and certain parts of the group can stay out of the water longer, move further away from the water, then they will start to merge away. This is an example of this stuff happening. So for you to say that you can't give me an example of it is really sort of, I don't know if you're being intentionally ignorant or just ignoring the evidence or forming an opinion about the evidence, saying, no, doesn't count. Like you've done with the whole fossil record, what you've done with genetics. This is hardcore evidence of common descent, of morphology, of nested hierarchies in taxonomy. I really don't know how to make it any more plainer than that. Okay, I'll just read this paragraph before I dissect it, but this is from just your last letter that you sent me. I'm sorry about my poor description of vestigial. I should cease with examples and lay out my thoughts, as I seem to cause more confusion with examples. Here's the crux of the point, and again, I literally know nothing about biology. Oh, dude, then why are you saying that the cornerstone of biology, evolution, is faulty if you know nothing about biology? Just a little side point. My point is, from my understanding, there is something called recessive genes. Could an appendix, chicken teeth, be a recessive trait that again is still within the genome that could be reactivated through natural selection if environment change and these organs could be useful? Possibly, for sure. What they are is they're bits and pieces left over from when our previous ancestors were using them. The appendix had more to do with much more, I think it was, you know, very tough stuff to digest and all that sort of stuff in our diet, which goes back to the wisdom teeth. That was when our jaws were bigger with lots more molars in them for grinding stuff and all that. Now we don't need it, but they're left over like the appendix and they're crowding in our jaws. And I think I've made this point. Okay, now evolution isn't perfect. Maybe that's the wrong thing to say. Evolution isn't perfect by our standards. Maybe people dying of these particular things is a natural selection in itself, because, you know, people who don't die of them get to pass on their genes. See what I mean? But imagine living 100 years ago with these type of things. I mean, people died horribly in their teens and their 20s by an infected, ruptured, gangrenous appendix rotting away in their gut. And you died over a few series of days. Your wisdom teeth would impact and get really mucky and infected, and your jaw would rot out. This was what was happening before the advent of modern surgery. Now, you're saying that, I don't know if you see, once again, it's hard to grasp what you really mean, but is it a divinity that created us as we are now? Well, that divinity put those things in us that did this stuff, okay, that killed us outright. So evolution can explain why they're there. Evolution can explain why we have genes for a tail and all that sort of stuff, because once down the line we had these things. We needed them. Now we don't, but the genetics is still there. Some call it junk DNA, some call it recessive, or whatever, but a lot of them are turned off, but in some people they get turned back on. So in the end, are we going to start, the little changes will add up, and those little changes along our evolution will be that our wisdom teeth will just disappear, that the appendix will keep shrinking as it's not needed. So this is what I mean by vestigial. Okay, this is, vestigial means of diminished or no function. Okay, people say, well, the appendix still does blah blah blah. Okay, fine. That's okay, but it's certainly not a really important part of the digestive system anymore. So I think that is what I mean by vestigial, and in the end I'm not sure that you understood what I meant by vestigial. Okay, your last paragraph here. I would love for you to tell me your beliefs of origin and evolution. I think I stated I don't really have beliefs about origin and evolution. I accept veins of evidence and facts that lead me to conclude that these are the best explanations. Origins is a little bit harder because in the end we don't really know. We've got some good ideas, and let's face it, we've got a lot of it's not just the Miller-Urey experiment that happened, you know, a long time ago that creationists love to debunk. There's a lot of experiments that have shown that your basic building blocks of life, not cells, not living cells, but your basic, like, amino acids, those precursors to proteins and all that sort of stuff, can happen in very primitive environments. Okay, that we think were on Earth, and they've done it in a number of these primitive environments with different gases and liquids and all that sort of stuff, and they found that they can keep getting these precursors. Now that's evidence that leads me towards a certain point of view. Creationism has no evidence. It just doesn't. If it did, I'd consider it, but in the end it's got nothing. And honestly, you could, I think one of your evidences were, oh well, we just keep seeing the same things giving birth to the same things. Yeah, well, great, you know, a cat's still a cat. That's what that boils down to. That's sort of a rejection of the fact that things do change, you know, little by little by little. And here's a point I want to make too. You've accepted that things do change within a species, and where does that, what mechanism in your belief stops that change? Where, because evolution says that over millions and millions of years these changes keep accumulating until eventually the species of animal, so many hundreds of thousands, millions of years down the track, it is unrecognizable from its ancestor. These changes keep it. Now, within your point of view, what stops these changes from accumulating anymore? Do you reject speciation? Do you reject another species coming out of a parent species after so many of these changes happen, like in ring species? Okay, that's a really good example of one species here on the side of a geologic barrier, and it's been split from one group until eventually you get to the top and they can't even procreate anymore. This is little changes. So this species it's on its own journeys. This one is as well. So what would stop those species from actually going on and on and on and on and on? Do you understand what I'm saying? So back to the point, origins. I have my views, but I don't think there's anything written in stone yet. Tell me about your beliefs about evolution. I think I've done that. I don't have beliefs. I accept it as the best explanation thus far for biodiversity and life, of life on Earth. It tells us with clarity and really good evidence about this is why there's so many species on the Earth. And that's why I accept it as that best explanation. If something else comes along, I'm not attached to it emotionally. If something else comes along and disproves it out of hand, fine, I will. If it does turn out that we were intelligently designed, fine. But that still wouldn't sort of, put the kibosh on evolution. So evolution is demonstrable in so many ways. So I hope that sort of answers your question. I'll just keep reading. We are getting into arguments while I'm simply explaining my beliefs. Yes, and that's a little bit of the problem. You're not really giving me facts to hold on to. What I hoped our discussion would be is not a battle of me defending and explaining my points, but rather a statement of my beliefs, and then you state your beliefs. Look, we could do that, and I'll give some license here if you want to keep going. State something that you want to discuss. I've had really good discussions about morality and the concept of morality and how it applies to atheists, atheism, and all that sort of stuff. So we don't have to necessarily go along the hardcore science issues if you want to talk about some of that sort of stuff. So if you give me your synopsis of origins and evolution in the near future, so I can see where you stand. I hope I've done that. I really do, because I don't think I can put it any more succinctly. Alright, well, get back to me when you can, man. I hope you don't mind me making a video. And so far, our discussion has been really civil, and I like that, because sometimes, and I know my side of the fence gets a bit rude too, but so do creationists, and it becomes, quite ugly. But so far, everything is quite cordial and congenial, so let's keep it that way and just be friendly about it. Alright, man, just get back to me when you can.